Welcome everyone to our Vaishali taking on Tan Zhongyi in the final round of the FIDE Grand Swiss 2025. An extremely crucial round for Vaishali as she is looking to defend her title. She's currently in the joint lead with 7.5 points along with Katrina Lagno as the FIDE president comes in and shakes hands with her. Vaishali needs to hold her opponent to at least a draw, as there you can see Katrina Lagno passes by. There are a few players on 7 points in the tournament. You have Yuxin Song and Bibisara Asaubayeva, and there comes in Tan Zhongyi. The thing is that Tan Zhongyi has already made it to the candidates thanks to her third place finish at the FIDE World Cup 2025. And so even if she manages to surpass Vaishali by beating her, she's not actually going to get the spot there. But for Vaishali, if she wants to win this event, then she must either draw or win, depending also on what Katrina Lagno does. So many permutations, combinations, like it is always the case in the last round. But what it all boils down to is, can you make good moves on the board? Well, we'll see. Tan Zhongyi is ready, Vaishali is ready, the players shake hands, and off we go. With the white pieces, Tan opens the game with c4. And Vaishali calmly thinks about it and pushes her pawn to c5. Now, takes her time a bit, goes knight to f3. Tan Zhongyi, a very strong player, won the candidates in 2024 and challenged Zhu Wenjun for the world title. Well, she couldn't do that well in the world championship match, but her experience is immense. So for Vaishali to be able to hold herself in this game will be a very important thing. d5 played in the center, pawn takes on d5, and knight takes d5 taken. Bishop comes to g2, putting the bishop on the long diagonal here, and knight to c6. Vaishali develops. And now one of the main moves is knight c3 when you go knight c7, but Tan Zhongyi plays d4. This is more drawish in nature, this line, more equalish you can say. Pawn takes pawn and knight takes pawn. So the bishop opens up here, and now it's important to know that the best move is ndb4, and of course Vaishali knows it. If you take here, I take back. If you take on, like, I'm threatening to take on d4, so knight b5. Well, the main move is knight c6, but knight b5 isn't the best move. Vaishali thinks for 12 minutes and plays bishop f5, threatening a check, quickly castles, and now knight c2 is not the best because of e4, and white is better. So a6 played to kick the knight away. And Tan Zhongyi comes back, knight to a3, not on c3. And Vaishali now has to decide between taking on, yes, she takes the queen on d1, because now the knight controls the c2 square, so there's no knight c2 business happening. And g6 played to get the bishop on this long diagonal. Bishop comes to d2 with the idea of bishop c3 maybe. And Vaishali brings her rook to d8, pinning here. And you can see that Vaishali's style is very direct. She can develop her piece here, bishop g7, but she could also think about knight c2 stuff. So bishop g7 played, getting the bishop to the long diagonal. For now, it all looks pretty even. Knight to c4 played by Tan Zhongyi. And now the knight is planning to come to e3 to dislodge the bishop, and Vaishali gets in. She's like, okay, Tan, now your rook is hanging, so you need to move it away. Rook c1 played. And now the knight is defending the bishop on d2, so b5 is a powerful move. Very interesting stuff. So if you move the knight, you lose the bishop. So she attacks the knight, because if you move the knight, you lose the bishop. So very interesting stuff. Pawn takes. Pawn takes. And now if you take on d2, c6 is hanging with a check. So knight b4, defending the bishop, attacking the bishop on d2. And knight to d5, a good move, blocking the rook's path. If you take with the knight, I take on c2. She does take it. Knight takes d5. And rook takes c2 taken. Attacking the pawn on c4 and also on a6. Black short castles here. And rook takes on a6. So now we reach a position where Vaishali is slightly worse, because her opponent has the bishop pair, but her knight is well placed. And this is a good position to fight for a draw from. e4. Knight goes to c7. And Tan Zhongyi plays rook to b6. And now Vaishali finds a very beautiful move, rook b8. And why is this so good? Is because, let's say you take. Now c4 is not hanging because b2 is hanging. But if bishop f4, her idea is rook takes b2, rook takes, bishop c7, c3, and bishop a1 with a draw. Bishop f4, bishop b2. Beautiful calculation. But in the game, after takes, bishop c1, c3 played by Vaishali, giving up the pawn. B takes c3 taken. And now knight to b5, attacking the pawn on c3. Rook goes to b2, pinning here. And once again, Vaishali finds the most clinical way. First attacking c3 now. The knight is taken. Rook a1 is kind of getting you back the piece. Check by Tan Zhongyi. Bishop comes back to f8. Bishop f1 played. Rook takes bishop by Vaishali, attacking the pawn on c3. Rook c8. Now it's opposite colored bishops. King comes up to g7. So Vaishali is a pawn down. King g2. But here's the point. The f2 point is a bit soft. So Vaishali goes bishop b4. You can't take the bishop. The rook is hanging. So I have to push the pawn. She pushes. And now with rook c2 and bishop e1. Yes, she plays rook to c2. It's very difficult to hold on to the f pawn. King comes to f3. Now can you play bishop? If you go bishop e1, there's bishop e2. That's the way she wants to defend. So check. King e2. Rook c1 played to make sure that it's not so easy to get. By the way, check is a big threat. So bishop h3. Check again. King f1. Check again. King g2. And h5 played. Rook comes to c7, attacking the pawn on e6, as this would be pinned. King f8 played calmly. And f4, just to get this f2 pawn away from being attacked. But now Vaishali gives a check. King g1. And if you can get the bishop on this diagonal, it would be very cool. So bishop c3 played with the idea of bishop d4 check. Rook c8. And now king g7. And there's just no way to make progress here for Tan Zhongyi. So she goes rook c7, attacking the e6 pawn. And by the way, the game between Katerina Lagno and Ulvia Fatalieva ended in a draw quite soon, which means that if Vaishali manages to draw this game, she will become the champion. And a draw, Vaishali manages to hold Tan Zhongyi, reaches the score of 8 points, becomes the FIDE Grand Swiss 2025 champion, books herself a spot in the FIDE Candidates 2026. Incredible play by the youngster. And to think about it, she actually wasn't going to play in this tournament because she did not have a good Chennai Grandmasters tournament, and she was so upset at that point that she decided to not play. But it was her brother Pragnananda and her friend Karthikeyan Murli who inspired her to play here. And with that, Vaishali is here as the champion of the tournament. Kudos to her, and extremely proud of her achievement. To win such a strong tournament 2 times in a row is no mean feat.